Hey, it's the Mike Rogers Show. Mike Rogers here with you. And today we have a very special guest from a band you may have heard of. They were called the Pleasers. The Pleasers were an English power pop group founded in 1977 in West London, Surrey, England, consisting of Stephen Benham, Steve McNerney, Nick Powell, and Dave Rochelle. Did I pronounce his name right?
Yeah.
Stephen Benham is a composer, a bass guitarist, and a vocalist. He went on to produce New Music Television and is currently managing director of In Tune Music Library and Sound Street Radio, Tokyo and London. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big hand and welcome Mr. Stephen Benham. Yeah. How's it going, Stephen?
Very well, thank you. Yeah, I'm in Tokyo, same as you.
Yeah. So can you give us your own personal introduction? Say whatever you want. You got 10 minutes. Go ahead. Go.
10 minutes? God, speak for that long. Yeah, well, I mean, my life has been involved in and around music for most of my life. And it kicked off with a few bands where I used to live in Guildford, Surrey, in the UK, and then I sort of put an advert one day in Melody Maker. Do you know Melody Maker? You've heard of that?
The magazine?
Yeah, that was out in. This is about 74, I think, 1974, 75. For a guitarist, I used to be playing with a little band called Leaves that me and a mate of mine put together, and I put an ad for a guitarist in the Melody Maker, and this guy called Steve McNerney applied. And he turned out to be really good, and in fact, we ended up throwing everybody else out of the band because we went on holiday to Spain. He said, "You got to get rid of that guy because he's not good enough," and he was a good friend of mine, so that was really difficult. But we got rid of him anyway, and then we looked for a drummer. Steve found a drummer from a gig that he went to. The Count Bishops, I think they were called. They were a real heavy kind of rock and roll band back in.
That's a very famous band, Count Bishops.
Yeah, and Dave was playing drums with them back then, and Steve saw him, and he went back to our publisher, which was Carlin Music at the time, who were interested in some of the songs that we demoed for them, and he said to a guy called Dave Watson, who unfortunately died a long time ago. He said, found this drummer, and he'd be really good for us. So he made contact with him, and we had an interview with Dave, got him down to the office, and he said, "Yeah, great." And he left the band and joined us. And then we looked around and scouted for another lead guitarist. It up to be Nick Powell. The Pleasers started before Nick joined the band, but it was, I'm trying to delve back into my memory. It's such a long time ago now. And Nick proved to be the right guy. And we got rid of this guy called Chris, because there were three Steves in the band. There was me, Steve McNerney, and this other guy, Steve, I can't remember his surname now, who we named Chris when we went into Abbey Road Studios to record our first little single with Ron Richards, who was one of the Beatles producers, along with George Martin. And I don't know if you know, Ron Richards did all the Hollies stuff. He produced all their music. And we went in to do a track called You Know What I'm Thinking, Girl, with a B-side called Hello Little Girl. And we were in the Beatles studio recording those songs. And of course, for us, that was amazing. And Nick joined the band, and after that, we were up and away. We were doing some gigs in North London, a pub called the Stapleton, which was a little kind of happening gig at that time, back in 76, 77. And loads of the bands that were around and came up with us at that time did that gig. And we were seen by a potential manager, which his name was Chips Chipperfield, And Chipperfield ended up producing the Beatles anthology.
Wow.
And so he was the producer of that, but that came a long time after, of course. But yeah, there was him and Pete Hawkins as a management company. We used to call it the Chipperfield Circus, which was what it was really. Unbeknownst to us at the time, they had a deal with Arista Records. EMI was offering us a deal, and but what we didn't know is that Arista had first refusal on any bands that Chips and Pete Hawkins wanted to sign. Well, we weren't aware of that. We wanted to go with EMI, but we ended up going with Arista, which was not a great, because I mean Arista, I mean that's all kind of like what's that guy's name? At the Copacabana.
Barry Manilow.
That's it. Yeah, he came along, and
oh my God,
Clive Davis said, "Stop everything. You got to push this guy. You got to push this guy." So every band that was signed to Arista at the time suffered because of Barry Manilow. Anyway, we went on a tour.
Wait a minute. I've got to correct you, Stephen. Not every band, everybody who listened to that record, or every band suffered because of Barry Manilow.
Patti Smith did well. I mean, she was around on Arista at that time.
Mm-hmm.
What was that track? Because of love for two lovers. Da, 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 da. I forgot the name. What's the title of that?
I don't know.
Because the night belongs to...
Because the night.
Yeah.
Because the night belongs to lovers. Because I don't even know the name of the song, but when you sing it,
great single.
Yeah.
We went out on our first British tour, which was supporting us was Joe Jackson.
Oh.
And our road manager was Paul Crockford, who ended up managing Level 42 and Dire Straits.
Wow.
And but we kind of knew all those bands at that time, which is how he got the gig and how everybody got to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a great period. I feel sorry really for a lot of the new bands and new artists coming up now that don't have that experience of being able to play all those wonderful venues that we played, and of course the universities.
Mm-hmm.
They all had great venues within them. So for bands to cut their teeth, really.
Wow.
So where am I? Oh yeah, then we met up with a guy called Jeff Haslam for our second single.
Mm-hmm.
He was quite a well-known producer. I can't remember what it is that he produced, but you can look him up. Jeff Haslam was recommended to us for the sound that we were putting out at that time, and we went into what used to be Decca Records in Hampstead to record downstairs in the basement where the Stones did their audition.
Wait a minute. The name of the song was Downstairs, where the Stones used to do their audition.
No, that would be a good title, but that wasn't it. There's an office in West Hampstead, Decca Records. It's the English Opera House now. Own it. But I actually went down there with Dave Rochelle about 5 years ago, just as just to reminisce, really, to see if the studio was still there, and it was still there, except all the guts had been taken out. So, but we remembered the room, and that's where the Beatles did their audition. Were turned down by Decca, at the time. So back in the 60s. So yeah, God, it's a long time ago. It sounds terrible. I'm not that old, but I feel it sometimes. And so there was a lot of history around where we were performing in recording in Decca and then Abbey Road. It was fantastic time.
So you guys had the Pleasers before Steve McNerney joined the band, or
no,
after you?
To be honest, we had a band called Leaves that I was fronting at the time. Then Steve McNerney came in, and as you know, after put the ad in the Melody Maker, the leaves were finished, and then we sat down one day in a cafe trying to rack our brains to see what name we could call ourselves, and we came up with the Pleasers, and which seemed fairly simple and everything, and because we wanted to please everyone.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, well, not everyone. Otherwise we'd have had a #1 hit, which we never had. So but we had a cult following, which now we've got a great cult following, which is great, which maybe if we had that one hit wonder we would have never have had. But anyway, where was I? I digress there. Where was I?
Well, wait a minute. So tell me about leads or leaves. Was it leaves or leaves?
Yeah, leaves, as the leaves that fall off the trees.
Yeah, so the leaves. How did that band get started? And tell me about like your history from when you were a kid.
Oh God! Well,
let's go from the leaves and backwards.
Oh, I'll go back slightly before that. I used to work I got a job after school because I never passed any exams really. I was hopeless, and I got a job in Boozy and Hawks, which was
boozing and Hawks.
Boozy and Hawks.
Oh, Boozy and Hawks.
Yeah, if you were a brass player, like on trombone or clarinet, you'd know who they were because they made the best kind of brass instruments at the time. And I got a job working at Boozy and Hawks in a place called Cavendish Organ Centre, which was just Regent Street near the BBC, Upper Regent in London. And I ended up being the Hammond, Hammond organ, representative.
Wow.
Because I was the young kid on the block at the time. And then when the synthesizers came out, like Moog and ARP synths, we started ordering them. And I was the only young guy at the time who knew how to operate them. And because I was really into all that, and so I was selling tons of stuff, out of that store, made them a lot. So this Cavendish Organ Centre was a kind of shop just around the corner from the main store, which was Boozy and Hawks, although it belonged to the same company. And people like, Vangelis used to come in, and Ginger Baker. And so I sold most of Vangelis's synthesizers, all of the stuff. Or I used to get in a cab with the new synth and take it over to his studio in Hampton Gurney Street, which was just around the corner from Marble Arch in London. So I ended up learning so much from Vangelis. He was a wonderful man. And I was only about sort of 16, 17 at the time. And so I kind of would stay overnight in the studio. He had this big, thick, furry rug throughout the studio, which was an amazing place, And he had a beautiful girlfriend at the time, French girl called Veronique. I'll never forget her. So I used to stay overnight in the studio and just watch him recording and doing the percussion and doing everything. And I kind of just learned so much of just being a hanger-on, I suppose, at the time, a very young one, but he liked me, and I got to show him how some of these synths worked. And I picked up a few kind of, I think when I play the keys, there's a bit of him still there, I think, in what I and the progressions I make. But he was a great influence on me, Vangelis. So that lasted for a year or two. And then one day, my manager had a phone call and said, you got to take an ARP synth down to the Camden Carousel Club in Camden High Street. So I hopped in a cab and took this two ARP synthesizers down there. And I had to demonstrate these to Linda McCartney. And then Paul walks in, and Beatle fan, nut, and
yeah.
So it was like, my God, it's God. And and they just finished Band on the Run. And the second day that I had to go in there and show her how this synth worked, the second I took my album, my Band on the Run album, of course, he and Linda signed it, and I still got that. And they started jamming because they were auditioning drummers for the Wings, the new Wings band that he was putting together. Because after Band on the Run, Ed, he didn't have a band; it was just him, Denny Lane, and Linda. So they were drummers, and I was sitting there at this Fender Rhodes that he had, and he was going through high, and I started kind of playing and in the background, and he heard me, and he said, "Oh yeah, turn it up." And so I started jamming, and then did a solo, and I ended up getting invited to his Wings concert, a backstage pass, which was wonderful.
Wow!
And
you brought your girlfriend with you, though, didn't you?
Huh?
You brought your girlfriend with you, didn't you?
She ended up being my wife. Yeah. I took to. I must have told you this story then. And I took her to the gig, and she that really impressed her. I think that we had a backstage pass to the Wings.
Oh, hey Paul, Linda, how's it going? This is my friend. I'll talk to you guys later. I've got to go drink coffee or something.
I just was wide-eyed and legless. I mean, I was just like a rabbit caught in the headlights.
Yeah.
But that was he was a lovely man. And I subsequently met him a few times after that as well. When he came he saw me playing keys in this gig that I did, which was really nice. Yeah, he's a great guy and lovely man, and very, very, very good at what he does.
So wait, I got to ask a question, and a lot of people have thought this. I mean, nobody ever asked me, but you showed Linda McCartney how to use the synthesizer.
Yeah.
Could she play?
Yeah, she could. Yeah, she picked it up pretty easy. I mean, I wouldn't have wanted to be her with that pressure. I mean, I didn't. She was high at the time when I was teaching her. I mean, she was really floating. And a strange thing happened. The third day I went to meet them, I took a little carrier bag with me, and the handle was a microphone with a big cassette machine. Do you remember those cassette machines with with battery on it? And so I recorded the conversation that I had.
Oh, you can't do that.
No, and of course Linda saw it. She said, "What are you doing?" So I said, "Oh, I was just recording," because my friends wouldn't believe this. She said, "Well, I just rather you didn't." So I said, "Okay," and I switched it. I got quite a lot on tape at the time, but I mean about bootlegs and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Stupid, but I wanted to play it to my mates. That's all. And, of course, I did, because none of them believed me until I played this track of him coming up and saying, "What's the difference between this one and that one?" So, and me explaining the difference between these two synths.
Wow. Wow.
So, then I got invited back to the house to demonstrate,
Wait a minute. The house, you mean you went to Paul McCartney's house?
Yeah. I got to get a cab there the next day because he couldn't concentrate in the rehearsal studio. So I had to go back there and show her how this worked. And the funny thing is that many, many years later, this is about 10 years ago now, it must be 10 years ago, I was doing this gig in the Connaught Hotel in London and ran into McCartney with his entourage. And he looked at me and did a double take, and then beckoned me over, and he said, "Hi, haven't I seen you somewhere before?" I said, "Yeah, it's amazing that you remember me from all the faces that you see. I sold Linda since, you know, back in, God, this is 70, at the end of Band on the Run. I don't know, I can't even remember what year that was, 74, 75 or something.
Something like that, yeah.
So, and he invited me to sit with them. There was, you know, all these business associates, and Stella was there, and all the suits, you know.
Yeah.
And funny enough, he just took a call. He said, "Excuse me, I've just got to take this call." And he was speaking to Billy Joel on the phone. And I think that's the day they agreed for McCartney to go out and do that appearance at Billy Joel's gig in New York, where he did up. So they were arranging that on the phone at the time. So this is all like name dropping, but I mean, it was a big, you know, big deal for me at the time, and still is. It's a great experience for me.
Wow. I have so many questions. Wait a minute. So, you said before that at the universities, you were talking about Stapleton, and that's a club, right?
Yeah, that's when that's where the pleasers started to cut their teeth before we had a manager. And
I see.
Then Chips Chipperfield came along. We signed to him, then signed to Arista. Then we first British tour, which Joe Jackson supported. So we helped break Joe Jackson. Then there was Simple Minds supported us in Glasgow, and you know, I'm not sure if that was the same tour, because we did a few British tours at the time, and then went on into Europe.
Okay, and then you told me that you played at universities. The universities had like, what do you call it, live houses or something?
Yeah, the one thing that I've noticed in Japan that they don't have in their universities here is venues for the bands to come and play or anything like that. And
you know why? Wait, you know why, don't you, Stephen?
No, I don't.
Because I don't want to talk too long, but so you know what Mizu Shobai means? Mizu Shobai means water work. You know, so water work is like hostess bars. The ladies have customers and they pour them water and drinks and stuff like that. Geisha, musicians, television work. This is all what's called Mizu Shobai. And this being a very conservative country, they don't want their kids to go to university and then graduate and then become rock and rollers. They don't like that, because they pay all this money for the kids to go to university. And so they want them to come out and become a banker, a doctor, a lawyer, or whatever. So they don't like the idea of paying all this money and then having their kid come out as a rock and roller. And so that's why at universities in Japan, they generally don't teach things like, you know, how to do radio and TV. These are learn how to do radio and TV is the domain of trade schools.
It's a shame, because that's
it is. I think so.
Bands cut their teeth, and that's where we did. I mean, every university, we played just about every university in the UK at the time, and kicking off with the Surrey University, and they've got fantastic lighting, fantastic. Sorry about that. I have to switch that off, and yeah, they got fantastic lighting, fantastic sound system, and a great stage for bands to perform. And that's when McCartney went, when the Wings started out, you know, when he went and cut his teeth in a lot of the universities up north.
Okay.
So you know, that's how he rehearsed Wings. And most of the bands, you know, that are still known of today all cut their teeth in the universities in the UK. I'm not sure how it works in the States, but I'm sure they got venues there too.
Yeah, in the States they do that too. Yeah.
So that's one sad thing that I've noticed in Asia, well, particularly Japan. They don't have that facility, which means you've got all these very weird venues. They're not very big, you know, most of the time.
Yeah. Okay, so Stephen, I'd like to continue this interview in part 2. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Rogers Show. Today's guest is the Pleasers bassist, composer, bassist, and vocals, Mr. Stephen Benham. Thank you so much, Stephen. Very interesting talk. And if you like this video, please go down here and click like and subscribe, and we'll see you back here tomorrow when Stephen tells us about his band, The Pleasers, new music television, and what he's doing with Sound Street Radio, which is very earth-shaking, new, exciting. And that's what we're going to do. Okay, Stephen, bye.